Alright guys, I'm going to teach you how to set up the Endzone system now. Just like the sideline instant replay, it looks like it's really complicated, but once you learn how to do it, it's not that hard. First thing we do is we start by pulling out the pole. Alright guys, as you can see, you don't have to set the Endzone camera system right behind the field goal post. You can set it up pretty far back. The zoom on the camera is really good, so do yourself a favor, set the camera system up way in the back towards the fence, so that way you have less chance of the Hipod getting hit by the football on an extra point. Alright guys, so once you pull the pole system out of the case, the first thing you want to do is get it centered up directly behind the field goal post. Right now I'm a little off, so I'm going to move it to the left a little bit to get more centered. Alright guys, so now that I have the pole centered, I'm going to lock the thing into place so that way the pole can rotate. And I'll show you guys how to do that right now. Alright guys, so now that we have the pole centered, what we want to do is get the pole elevated so that way it can rotate freely. In order to do that, we have to lift the pole up so that it's not touching the ground. Lock it into place using these black knobs. Once you have the black knobs locked in place, you want to use these yellow knobs as the neck support. They're going to come up and put the bearings in place, and then we'll release the black knobs so that this can swing freely. So what you'll see right here is these locks have arrows on them pointing to the direction that they go. You want to start with the bottom lock. The bottom lock is pointing up. It's already up as high as it can go, so we're going to tighten this down as much as possible. The next lock we're going to do is this middle one. These things can be really sticky, so just if you have to, wiggle it a little bit. Sometimes we'll use WD-40. If there's a can in the case, go ahead and use it. And lift this lock up with the bearing and get it as high as you can up to the bottom of this base. Now you want to tighten this thing down as much as possible. And do the same thing with this third one. This third yellow lock goes down all the way as far down as possible. Sometimes this thing hits the silver ring, and in order to get that to not hit, just pull it out a little bit, and that should give you enough room to tighten it. Alright guys, once we have the 3 yellow rings in place, the bottom one's all the way up, the middle one's all the way up, and the top one's all the way down, all 3 are locked in place. Now we can release these black knobs that were the supports in the first place. Once these are released, the pole should stay in place without touching the ground anymore, and it should move freely. If it's moving freely, we did a good job. The next step is setting up the bases for the monitor and for the camera. This goes up top and will hold the camera. This goes down below and it holds the monitor. And this piece is the piece that we use to rotate the camera left and right and up and down. So the first thing we want to do is put this top piece in the slot and make sure that this hole is lined up directly with the knobs. So we want to make sure that once this piece is in the hole, that this little hole right here is lined up directly with the knobs. I'll explain why this is important later. But once we have it aligned, we want to use this knob to tighten it down. Another important piece before we get the whole system up is to make sure that these strings are in the groove of the pulley. If they're not, we won't be able to rotate the camera up and down, and we'll have to pull the whole system back down to fix it. Once we have the strings in the pulley, the next part is to loosen this tab right here, which brings the platform down that the camera sits on. Underneath the base for the camera, there's a green level. You want to make sure you get the bubble centered direct as much as possible and tighten this knob down once you have it centered. The reason why it is important to get this as centered as possible is because this is what's going to get the camera level with the field. If this is not centered, then the camera will be tilted and the whole film will look bad. This is the next piece that we want to install. The yellow knob goes on the left side if you're facing the field. Alright, In order to attach this, you want to get it as high up to this first bracket as you can, and then just tighten this star knob down as tight as possible. You want to make sure that this is as centered with your handles here as possible. The next thing we want to do is attach the pulley strings to this knob, which is what controls the up and down movement of the camera. In order to do so, you just have to look at the arrows that are right here. This arrow is pointing down, which means you need to pull this pulley forward and it goes to the front string. This string goes up this way towards this arrow and attaches to the back string. Before we can put this system up, this knob needs to be completely loose. So, just make sure once you have everything set up that this knob is loose and this knob is loose before we do anything else. The next piece we want to install is the monitor mount. This goes directly behind, or directly below, I should say, the yellow knob. All you have to do is take it, wrap this arm around, put it on the silver bar right here, and tighten the silver bar down. In order to attach the monitor mount, all you have to do is put it directly below the pulley bar, insert this silver bar into this groove, and then tighten the knob down. Okay, what you notice right here is the handles are directly aligned right here with the yellow knob, which is good, but the monitor mount is to the left. We don't want that, so you have to loosen this back up and turn it so that way it is directly aligned with those knobs. The next step is to attach the monitor to the Endzone camera system. In order to attach it, first we need to put the battery on the back of the monitor. You know which battery goes with the monitor because it's labeled Hipod monitor on it. And it also has these little silver holes that attach to these little grooves on the back of the monitor. In order to attach the battery, just slide it into these grooves and push down until the holes attach to the silver bars. It should fit pretty snug. Okay. Now, in order to attach the monitor to the monitor mount, all you have to do is loosen up this ring. There's a little groove right here on the bottom of the monitor that just slides onto this bar. So just make sure that it fits directly into the groove. It can be a little awkward. And then once it's in, tighten this ring back down all the way. Be careful not to tighten it too much, because you can have a hard time getting it off at the end of the game. Alright, the next thing we want to do, guys, is make sure that we have our camera ready to go. In order to do so, we need to make sure that the SD card is in the slot. Sometimes it will already be in there, sometimes it won't be. So just get the SD card out of the case, slide it directly into the bottom of the camera like so, close the door, and we should be ready to go. We also want to make sure that the battery on the back is fully charged and is hooked up. These batteries last 11 hours, and the SD cards have about 10 hours worth of video on them. So you should have plenty of battery juice and space to record enough games. Alright guys, once we have the SD cards in the slot and we have the battery pack attached, we need to set up the camera for filming. First thing we need to do is erase all the old footage off of the SD card. In order to do so, click Menu, scroll down to Edit Copy, select Delete, All in Event, and click OK. Delete all images of this event. You want to say OK, and then it should say Completed. Select Camera Mic, select Scene Selection, scroll down, and without clicking, just scroll over, click the arrow, and then scroll all the way over to the snowman. The reason why is the monitor will not allow you to see what is on the camera unless we are on scene selection. It's a weird little function on the Sony Handycams that is kind of a pain in the butt, but you have to remember to do this, otherwise you won't be able to see the feed on your monitor. Once we have the camera set up, we want to attach it to the mount. Take it and put it as far out on the edge of the mount as possible and unscrew this gold screw. Once you have removed the gold screw, use it to slide into one of these long slots and find the hole on the bottom of the camera that the screw goes into. I like to slide the camera as far forward just so the mount doesn't get in the way of filming. Tighten it all the way down as much as you can and make sure that the camera is flush with the edge of the mount. There are only two cables that we need for the Endzone system. The first is this Sony remote cable. This attaches to the remote that you use for your zooming, and it has a label on it. It says Sony remote. The second cable is the Sony HDMI cable. This is the cable that goes from the camera to your monitor. The first thing you want to do is take your cables out and get them all unjumbled and get all the tangles out. You have plenty of room to do this in the Endzone, so just go ahead and spread your cables out. Once you have your cables sorted out and you've got all the knots taken out, you want to take the two ends that plug into the camera and put them together and wrap them around the base of this silver little knot thing right here. Once you have it set in this little hinge, you want to take it and make just a little basic knot. What this does is it secures the cables to the Hipod tower instead of the camera, so that way they can't be yanked out of the camera. Just make sure that this knot is pulled nice and tight, and then go ahead and take your two camera cables and plug them into the side of the camera. Now the remote cable goes on the outer side of the camera in this little slot here. And then the HDMI cable, this is a little bit harder to install, but it goes on the inside by the monitor. This plugs in this little slot right here. It's okay if you have to tilt it down in order to see it. Now we want to attach the remote. The remote's pretty cool in that the zoom out's to the left, the zoom in's to the right, and your record button is right here. This is pressure sensitive, so the harder you push it, the faster it will zoom in. The slower you push it, the slower it will zoom in. We attach the remote to this little hinge right here that is on the yellow bar. In order to attach it, just unscrew these two gold screws. Pull this little black piece down, slide it onto the hinge, and tighten your gold screws down. Make sure that you have the bar in between this slot before you let go, because I have had guys who don't do that and they think it's on, they let go and it falls and it breaks. In order to attach your remote control to your camera, you have these three-pronged male and female ends. This is the male end, this is the female end. All you have to do is find this little silver piece right here and match it up with the groove inside here. Alright guys, we're almost done. The next piece is we take the HDMI cable and we plug it into the monitor on the back side. Make sure you plug it into the in port, because the out port is going to take the HDMI cable that is used for the Endzone, for the sideline instant replay system. Before we extend the camera all the way up, we want to make sure everything's working properly. Otherwise, we're going to put it all the way up, the remote's not going to be working, the monitor's not going to be working, and we're going to have to take it all the way back down and do it all over again. Okay, as you can see, we can see what the camera sees, so we're good with the monitor. The next step is we want to make sure that our remote's working. So here we can zoom in and out using our remote. We'll go ahead, we'll take a test shot by pressing the record button on the remote. Here it shows we're recording, so we're good to go. Alright guys, everything's set up. Now we can go ahead and we can extend the camera up. Alright, once we have everything plugged in, you want to make sure your cables are not tangled, that they have plenty of room, you're not standing on them. And now you want to go ahead and start to raise your camera. In order to elevate the camera, make sure that this silver knob down here is loose, as I said before. Then go ahead and raise up your first bar. Once you have it as high as it can go, go ahead and hold the bar up with your left hand, it's not that heavy, and then tighten it down with your right. Then you want to take the cables, and using this Velcro, you want to attach them to this little groove right here so that it keeps them from getting tangled. Go ahead and raise the next bar up. And tighten it down just as we did before. Just like we did last time, we're going to put these cables in the groove, and we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with all of these knobs. The one thing I will say is if it's windy, don't extend the very top one. Leave the top one all the way down and just extend the ones below it. This will give it a more strong base because that top bar is a little thin. Alright guys, now we've got the Endzone camera set up. We're going to go ahead and install the Sideline Instant Replay Endzone camera system. You may not necessarily be using this for every game. It just depends on who the client is and whether or not they're using the Sideline Instant Replay system with us. Hopefully I showed you guys everything you need to know on how to set everything up. I'm sure I missed one or two things, and we'll add that in as we go. I can completely edit this video as the season goes along. But I just want to say I'm excited for the season. I'm really happy you guys are on board, and we got a lot of technology that we're working with this year. But as you can see, it's not that complicated. All you just really have to do is plug and play, and it's pretty good to go. So I'm excited to work with you guys, and I think it's going to be a great year.